Hello, and welcome to the Den of the Monster Ox. Today I am reviewing one of my favorite games and definitely one of my favorite stories that has come out in the last decade. NieR Automata tells the story of androids 2B, 9S, and A2 and their battle to reclaim the machine-driven dystopia overrun by powerful machines. So, after a decent amount of time trying to decide how to organize my thoughts on NieR Automata, I realized that I can't really explain much without going into how the game is structured. So, I'm going to go over that now, then do the TLDR and rankings after. The story is told through the eyes of three different characters across three different acts, we'll call them. In Act 1, we start with 2B. As an attack unit, 2B leaves the android space station and heads into battle against the machine forces that have invaded Earth. Let's call this Point A. Shortly after your landing, you encounter heavy machine resistance, you crash your mech, and end up meeting up with 9S, who is an android that specializes in hacking. 9S stays with you as a support as you help the remaining human resistance and destroy what is behind the machines. You reach ending A by defeating a giant machine with the help of your allies, and we will call this Point B. You get to Act 2 by loading the game file from the playthrough that you just completed. In Act 2, you go back to Point A, but this time you play as 9S with 2B as your support. You go through the same events as Act 1, except that you now have the insights of a hacker unit. And by that I mean that since 9S is an android hacking into machines, 9S sees the memories of the machines as he is hacking into them. This leads to more insight into the motives and memories that the machines have. And it makes 9S and the player question whether you are really making the right decisions. And this continues until you again reach Point B. Act 3 starts at Point B and then moves on to the final Point C. As such, you are dealing with the fallout of the events from Point A to Point B. Also, it is during this final act that we really get to meet A2, our third character. We do have a brief interaction with A2 during Acts 1 and 2, but all we really learn from that interaction is that she is wanted by the current leaders of the androids called Yorha. Here in Act 3, though, we do explore her backstory and her motives. No spoiler, TLDR version of the review. Okay. No spoilers. The protagonists are fun, unique, and put you through a roller coaster of emotions. Funny joke for those who know. The antagonists are very well designed. The way the story is told kept me involved and intrigued to see what else there was to see. And to be honest, I didn't appreciate the environmental storytelling as much until after I played NieR Replicant. And so now I realize that it's amazing in kind of weird, sad, depressing way. But overall, loved it. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, it is now time for the spoiler warning. From this point forward, there will be major spoilers as I can't properly explain my ratings without digging into deep spoiler territory. So for those who don't want to be spoiled, here's your time to tap out. For everyone else, let's get into it. Now I'm going to discuss each of our three protagonists based on what we know at the end of the game. So 2B. Let's start with the heart in the center of the game's plot. When you start the game, 2B comes across as a very callous and uncaring character, and her only focus is the mission. As the game progresses, her attitude seems to change, and you can tell that she is struggling with something. She starts to care for the emotions of 9S. She wants to help the resistance, and she seems to see and understand the plight of a group of machines that are done fighting. They're the peaceful machines. Now, this would be a good time to add that unless you are hacking into a mind as 9S, you don't ever hear the thoughts of any of our characters. You only hear what they say. So you can tell that 2B is struggling with something, but we don't know what it is until much, much later. So, have I given spoiler warning? Yes? Okay. Here's another one, though. Spoiler warning. So this then comes to a head when she dies at the beginning of the third act and leaves 9S and A2 to uncover who or what she truly was. At the end of the day, love 2B as a character, very well crafted. 9S. Oh, 9S. Of all the characters in the game, 9S had the largest roller coaster of character development. He starts out as a very happy-go-lucky kind of character that just has some very strong opinions regarding the machine versus android conflict and the nature of what makes a machine a machine. This changes after he hacks into the mind of the first boss of the game, and he sees things there that force him to reevaluate his preconceived notions. He does slowly change his mind, and then we get to the turning point when 2B dies. A circuit board fries in 9S's system. He goes berserk, which only gets worse when he discovers 2B's true nature and the secrets that Yorha had been hiding. Of all the characters in the game, 9S definitely had it the hardest. Very well crafted character. A2. When you briefly meet A2 in Acts 1 and 2, she assassinates a machine and turns to fight you. She ends up fleeing before you can kill or capture her, and Yorha calls and tells you that she was an older model that is now wanted by Yorha. Prior to the events of the game, the production of the A2 model had been stopped, and the 2B model was started in its place. And in Acts 1 and 2, that is all you really know about her. We start getting to know A2 in Act 3. Again, spoiler warning, blah blah blah. We are reintroduced to A2 when A2 kills 2B at 2B's request. A2 then gets pulled into the events of Act 3 as she continues her quest for vengeance, retribution, don't really know the right word. Either way, she eventually comes to terms with what has happened and meets 9S at the end of Act 3 to wrap up the game. Now to wrap up my thoughts on the protagonist. 2B's twists and turns in her writing really top notch. It is probably tied or just under the KOTOR reveal. Again, those who know. 9S goes on a top tier roller coaster, highs and lows, and intriguing the whole way. And A2 makes sure that the climax of the game hits home perfectly. Overall, 6 out of 5. Definitely gets the extra point. For our antagonists, start with Adam and Eve. So by the start of the game, the war between the machines and the androids has been going on for 10,000 years or so, and the machines had been winning pretty much the whole time. This is why the last android bunker is a space station and not on Earth. With the androids being on the back foot for so long, the machines had time to study what remained of mankind, and tried to understand through imitation. Over time, this led to the central intelligence that governed the machines. Well, it led to them evolving into two characters that are called Adam and Eve. Adam formed from the intelligence of mankind. He was the book reader. He conducted experiments to better understand what was around him. Whereas Eve formed basically from the emotions of mankind. He just wanted to enjoy his time with his brother Adam, and when Adam is destroyed by our protagonist, goes into a rage. These two, Adam and Eve, comprise the main antagonists of Acts 1 and 2. There's a couple other minor bosses. Technically, you have the final boss, but essentially it's Adam and Eve. Because they both represent aspects of humanity, there is a certain level of moral gray involved with needing to destroy them. A moral gray that becomes even more prevalent in Act 2 when you see into their memories through 9S's hacking. At the end of the day, I just loved how fresh they feel as antagonists. They aren't evil, and if anything, the androids could be seen as being gatekeepers, keeping them from their goal of understanding humanity. And thinking of the androids. Yorha. Tired of spoiler warnings yet? Yes? Well, too bad. Have one more. Act 3 starts with the androids invading Earth. Their thinking being that the central intelligence behind the machines are now both destroyed, and that now is their best time to attack and regain their footing on Earth. The plan quickly goes awry, and this ends badly for 2B, where she ends up dying at the hands of A2, where 9S arrives on the scene just to see her die. This leads both 9S and A2 down a path for their quests of vengeance. 9S for the death of his friend, and A2 for the deaths of her entire squad. Both of these quests lead our characters to Yorha, or the brain behind the androids. Much like how Adam and Eve had evolved from a basic machine mind, the mind behind the androids had been evolving as well, and its manipulations have been acting behind the scenes throughout the entire game, like being behind the true motivations of 2B. The realization of these truths change how you see the events of the game. But let's get back to that in a minute. Adam and Eve, Yorha. I really liked our antagonists. The subversion of expectation was excellently crafted. KOTOR still did it best, but this is a close second. So far. There's more games out there. There were times that their logic was hard to follow, so I will go with an overall score out of 5 instead of going for another 6 out of 5. Really liked what they did here, though. Story development. Since breaking down the story into its 3 acts was important in defining our characters, I don't really have too much to add here. One major thing that I did want to comment on, though, separately, was the concept of New Game Plus. Gamers should be familiar with the term, but for everyone else, it kind of is what it sounds like. Once you finish the game, you load the finished game file and start a new game. Usually, you get some extra bonuses, like starting with all the gear and levels you had ended the last playthrough with. NieR game Automata uses the New Game Plus, but instead of just playing through the same content with better gear, you get a whole new point of view on the story. And that point of view makes you question what you thought you had learned in the playthrough before. And then when you start the New Game Plus Plus, or Act 3, you play through a whole new series of events. So I just really loved how they took a concept that was familiar to many and added to it in a way that makes it more interesting, and it kept me invested in the game. Overall, 5 out of 5. Environmental storytelling. This is the section that I had the hardest time figuring out the rating. NieR Automata has amazing storytelling in its environment, but only for those that have played NieR Gestalt, or as it is called in other regions, NieR Replicant. Next to nothing in the environment is for Automata itself. Automata takes place millennia after Replicant, so everything in the environment is there to say, here's what happened to this person. Here's the legacy of this nation of people. To help kind of show my point, here's a selection of scenes that, if you've played NieR Replicant, you will recognize these locations and these things immediately. But if you haven't, and you're just playing through Automata, might not make so much sense. So yeah, I'm conflicted. NieR Automata was supposed to be a standalone game, but with all of these nods to Replicant, I feel that I have to judge it as a sequel. So I will. 5 out of 5, very well done, giving us a follow-up for those who had played Replicant. So to say that I enjoyed this game would be an understatement. It is currently the only game that I have cared to go through and find every collectible item, to complete every mission, to unlock every weapon, and to finish every achievement. I loved this game. I loved how well executed the story was. Every piece of the puzzle was there in front of you the whole time, but it took a couple different points of view in order to put each puzzle piece in their place. Very well done. One of these days I might put together a video dissecting the whole plot, but for now, we have our first A+ game with a final score of 10.5 out of 10. Alright, if you agreed with my review, leave a like, and if you'd like to see more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I will leave a link to my Discord in the description for if you have any suggestions for games I should review. The next game reviews all come from my favorite game series of all time. You'll just have to wait and see. I'll be playing some of it on Twitch, so maybe come join me for a sneak preview over on twitch.tv/themonsterox. And with that, thanks for joining me in the den, and we'll see you back for the next story review.